So yeah, this is what this failed experiment at creating a realistic piano in Serum sounds like. Hi guys, SKETI here, welcome back to a new tutorial. This time we're going to look at making a piano in Serum, but it sort of went a little bit wrong, but I made a cool sound anyway. It sort of sounds like a piano, but it's more like a harpsichord. But let's get to it. Right, so basically what I've done in Ableton Live is I've just grabbed the stretched mellow piano, which is in one of the Ableton Live packs that comes in Ableton Live 10. So yeah, it was this one here. And I've just basically created an F3 note. So if we just play that back. Yep, so 1 bar note, 120 BPM, dead simple. But the main thing I'm going to show you in this tutorial is how to take a sound and put it into Serum and process it a little bit so you can keep that sound as realistic as you can, even though overall it won't sound like a realistic piano, but you can still bring the sound in. The next thing that I'm going to do is basically resample this to an audio channel so we can obviously drag it into Serum's Wavetable Designer. So I'm just going to record this back. Cool, there we go. I'm just going to drag this back a bit and then also do a little bit of a fade out as well. So we can mute this channel now. Because I don't want a sample that's too long, because in Serum's Wavetable Designer you can only have up to 256 samples per wavetable. So with this I'm just making it a bar long, and then I'm also going to, with Command and J, I think it's Control J on Windows, is just consolidate that down into its, so it's a new audio file. And if we listen back to that now, cool, so there's our piano note. Next thing that I'm going to do is we're going to go into the Serum channel here. I've created two, which this is the finished one, but I'm going to use this first one just to show you how to create your own wavetables. So what we do in here is we load up our Serum, and we've got basically a standard initialized patch. If I just record arm this and turn it on, solo that, as you would if you open Serum, just a standard sawtooth. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab hold of this piano and just drag it here. Now it gives us lots of different options. So we've got import normal dynamic pitch 0 snap. We don't need to focus on that at the moment. Normal dynamic pitch follow, which, because it's not a dynamic pitch, it's literally just one note, it doesn't change pitch over time. The one that we're actually looking for is import constant frame size pitch average. So I'm going to use this one. So that's going to take a second to import, and if we press this pencil button here, actually if I just come out of here, we can now look over a 3D spectrum, the actual waveform, and if we take it back to 2D, so this is the waveform over time. And before I go into the Wavetable Designer, I am actually just going to draw a ramp wave like so, change this to envelope mode and keep it at a quarter note. So now when I play it back, we can hear that the piano tone is there, but it's got some weird metallic tones to it as it's reprocessed it. So what we're going to go through now is actually go through and change some of these things. So this beginning point here I don't really want, because you can hear it sort of got like the pedal note from when the hammer hits the well, when someone presses the pedal, and also when the hammer hits the string. Now for this I'm not too fussed, so I'm just going to get rid of those two. So I basically held shift down, highlighted those two, go to add remove, and then remove multi-selection. So those two waveforms at the beginning are gone now. And then the next thing, as we can see, the last waveforms, which this did do the full 256, the last waveforms are very similar after a while. So basically I'm just going to highlight the last one, go through until I find a point where it starts to change a lot, which is about here. And I'm literally just going to remove all of these samples. So remove multi-selection, like so. Now if we play it again, and obviously because I've set the LFO to envelope mode, it's just going to hold on that final waveform here, which if we just go to the end, is literally holding on that one. But we can have a look at this when we look at the other Serum that I've made. Yeah, so that's obviously the end one, and then So now there is still a little bit of distortions, and the first thing I'm going to do, because this is going to be needed for later, is I'm going to change this to a 64 by 64 grid, because we're going to do some processing. And if we go to process and change to remove DC offset, and that basically puts everything to this middle line as its center point, because DC offset, imagine it's a voltage, and when this sample was recorded through a microphone there might have been a voltage offset, so that basically pulls everything back to the center. Next thing I'm going to do is with process, because I've set this to 64 by 64 as a grid, I'm then going to crossfade edges by grid size. And that's also going to, it's almost like zero snapping, it's just going to get rid of any sort of clicks and pops between each sample. So this is going to sound a bit cleaner already. It still has that metallic resonance because it is skipping through each sample. And the last thing that we have to do is morph, and then you can choose between crossfade or spectral, and it depends on the sound which one works best, but let's try each one. So crossfade. And what this is doing is it's crossfading between each sample, so it's a very clean transition. We've got spectral, which does it over like a frequency spectrum rather than crossfading. So it tries to find the similar frequencies in each sample to fade between. And then we've also got different types as well. But I find for a piano, spectral works the best. And that's literally the basics of how you import a waveform into Serum. But we're just going to knock that one off for a second and have a look at this other Serum, because I've gone through and done a lot of processing already. So actually let's just pull everything back to its simple form. So yeah, I'm going to turn the sub off as well. Do I have anything else? No. Right, so the first thing we've got is we've got an LFO, as I did before, and it's applied to this wavetable position, but I've also applied a velocity to it as well, because basically what I wanted to make it sound as realistic as I could, even though I sort of failed at that, and it sounds more like a harpsichord, especially in the low range. Yeah, it has sort of more of like a metallic ring to it now rather than it being a piano. Is obviously when you're playing a piano, the softer you play the notes, the duller the sound, but the harder you play the notes, the brighter it sounds. And I found that obviously if we have the starting point somewhere within the wavetable rather than like at its loudest point, that's almost like if the hammers hit the string very lightly, so it's got that more muffled sound. And obviously it does start to sound a little bit brighter, and then in combination with the filter as well, we can really push that. So basically this LFO is going through the waveform normally as it would with the envelope, and I've actually set this one to a bar because I've recorded a longer note, and then the velocity is basically changing depending on how loud the note is played. And you can also see that this is applied to the cutoff as well. So if we turn this filter on now, so the quieter that I play the note, and then the louder goes from duller to brighter. Just sort of like a piano would, because when you play those notes very lightly, they don't sound super bright, unless the piano is set up that way. So there we go. And this, what I've done here is I've also duplicated this into this wavetable as well, and I've just put this up an octave. I was just basically trying to see if I could make this sound as realistic as possible, but it didn't really work out, but I ended up getting a cool sound anyway. So this was just to add an extra brightness with that octave above. Then I added a sub, which is just an analog, which is just a sine wave, and that's just to add a little bit more warmth to the sound. Cool. And then I've applied some effects on the end. Also, yeah, I did a little bit of unison on this, kept the detune and blend right down as well. And I also kept the random up on this one because, like when you play a physical instrument, every time you play a note, it's not going to sound exactly the same. So I didn't want it to be entirely synthetic. I wanted it to have that sort of analog and organic feel. So the random, it does start at different points within the waveform. So we're not always getting that same sound every time we press a note. And just to look at the unison as well, I actually kept the width the same, so we didn't need to do anything about that. But this is just to add a little bit of stereo spread, and also just give it as much organic and natural sound as we can. And the envelope one as well, I've also applied it like a piano would fade out over time. So over 960 milliseconds it fades down to minus 40.6 decibels on the sustain, and it also has a release as well. So I'm only pressing the note for a short time, but the note obviously is ringing out afterwards. And then I did hyperdimension, like I do as you've seen in my other tutorials. So retrigger turned on, mix applied, and also I did a bit of dimension just to add that short reverb to it. An EQ, I did a bit of notching the bottom end because I found it was a bit strong in those bottom end frequencies, the low mids, and I also did a wide peak in the top end just to bring out some more clarity in the notes. And we can actually turn that EQ off to hear the difference. Because I noticed without that notch filter, it just sounded more like a steel drum rather than a piano. I then applied a compressor, but not in multiband mode. This is just to basically just add some leveling across the board. So I turned the gain to 11.5 decibels and pretty much kept all of the other settings the same. And the last thing I applied was a whole reverb, size set to 35%, decay set to 4.1 seconds, low cut set to 25%, so there's no reverb in the bottom end, high cut set to 35%. I turned the spin all the way down because I found it was adding this sort of weird swirly chorus effect that I didn't like. And I just kept the spin depth as normal, and I set the mix to 33%. So just to add it like it's in sort of some big space. And then just to hear what it sounds like as a chord sequence with some chords in there. So this is just in F minor, so it's F minor 7 with, what else? A flat minor 7 as well. So this is what the this fake failed piano in Serum sounds like, and I'm also going to link the preset in the description as well, so you can grab hold of this and mess around with it. So yeah, this is what this failed experiment at creating a realistic piano in Serum sounds like. But even though it doesn't sound like a realistic piano, I think this is a sound that could be used in like future bass, chill wave, synthwave, all that kind of stuff, or even lo-fi. So it's still a useful sound. It's just obviously I feel that making it a realistic piano within Serum. But anyway guys, I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. If you have and you found it useful, drop a comment, leave a like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you see these videos more in the future. I'm also live on Twitch now, most nights in the week, GMT time from 8 PM onwards. So if you want feedback on your tunes, or just join a really wholesome and great community where we listen to each other's tunes and give great positive feedback and build each other up, obviously you can join me on there as well. I've got a link in the description to that as well. But anyway guys, I shall see you next time. Bye.
Everybody jump up.